My name is John Francis Tierney, Jr. I live in Cocoa Beach, Florida. I was born in Broken Bow, Nebraska, which I'm sure none of your viewers ever heard of. I'm 92, I'll be 93 this June. I'm a certified old poop. The Soviet Union had provided Cuba with Coma or PT boats, which were capable of 45 knots and turning on a dime. They had a land-to-land missile capability. The admiral in charge was firmly convinced they were either going to launch one into Key West or into Miami. And he wanted us down there to, our weaponry was 6 high-velocity rockets, non-guided, and he wanted us down there to cover those to prevent a possible launch at night. I explained to the admiral that that was not possible because we aimed those missiles by pointing our aircraft at them. And our night searchlight, we made a slow descent to a half mile, 50 feet before they turned the light on. And sometimes you only get just a moment and so forth like that. And I said, there's no way that you can point that aircraft from 50 feet down on a black night. And admirals don't like to be told no. And he didn't believe me, but he checked it out. And incidentally, we did get the first photos of the ship that, when they eventually resolved it, the Soviet Union agreed to remove the missiles. The Cuban Missile Crisis, you're probably aware of this, but it concerned the Soviet Union had installed missiles capable of reaching the United States in Cuba. And we were taking steps to get rid of that. I don't know what anybody thinks about President Kennedy, but he did prevent us from getting into World War III, in my opinion, because General, head of the Air Force said we should bomb them into the Stone Age. If we had, Khrushchev was ready to launch on New York City and Washington, D.C., and where that would have been, who the hell knows, you know. At the time, I was commanding officer of a Navy patrol squadron based in Brunswick, Maine. And they shipped half of my squadron to Newfoundland to set up a barrier to see if the Soviets were sending a big influx of submarines to Cuba. And I took half the plane down there. And this picture came back as a result of President Kennedy's visit. He was very curious about, because in addition to watch for Soviet submarines, we carried out open ocean surveillance. He was very curious about where we got the pictures of all ships sailing into Cuba at the time. And so he waved me over, and he went over and he had several questions. And that's about the size of it. No, I wasn't nervous, but I wasn't fully concerned that they were. Frankly, I got this from a higher up. He thought it was a bargaining ploy by the Soviets to get us to remove the missiles out of Turkey, which we did. And I kind of went along with that theory, so I wasn't particularly nervous. Oh, that was great. I thought he'd steam right on by, but we were lined up on the inner part of the airfield, and he was driving by on the taxi strip. So he waited to a stop and waved me over. So I thought that was big potatoes. It's a hard question. Probably being selected for command of a squadron was probably the high point. You want me to brag on myself? Well, I had been in 7 different aircraft squadrons, and I had, at that time, probably 7,800 or 8,000 hours flight time, military flight time. And that had a bearing on it. I don't know. There's a rigorous selection program by the Navy before you're selected for command. And I was fortunate enough to be selected for it. I flew hurricane reconnaissance for 2 years. For 2 years, the squadron I was in was assigned to the Miami Hurricane Center, and they controlled us. We'd leave 2 aircraft, Marine masters in the Miami area, which were on call for hurricane reconnaissance. And that wasn't particularly scary. It was just rough flying, a lot of turbulence. We were pretty primitive in those days about discovering, locating the eye. And many times you would have a very clearly defined eye on radar. Other times it was just a big blob. And we didn't have the sophisticated instruments they do in these days. It was mostly observation by eyeball. It was quite a thrill when we subsequently safely landed both Viking spaceships on Mars, because at that time the best resolution you had was about the size of a football field, and there are certain places low. And the worry was that it would hit a boulder and tip on its side, so that the antennas would not be pointing in the right direction for transmission of data back to Earth. So that was quite a thrill. Said Viking has landed, and immediately it was a tripod-shaped vehicle. It immediately showed a picture of the 3 feet upright and cameras and everything. They had several scientific experiments landed for that. They would dig down in the soil and they do an organic analysis of that, and also check meteorological conditions and so forth. Just like if the Redskins made a touchdown, beat Dallas.